Hello and welcome to another episode of Econ Echoes, the podcast where I dive deep into the past to unearth the roots of economic thought and practice in the Western world. I am your host, Sagar Raut, and today we are setting our time machine to an era long, long ago, way before Wall Street, before banks even had walls, when clay tablets were the spreadsheets and trade routes were the highways of commerce. Yes, today we are talking about economics in ancient civilization. Imagine a world where instead of swiping credit card or tapping your smartphone, people traded goods and services using tangible items like barley, gold, or even grain. A world where the first accountants etched numbers into clay to keep track of trades in the bustling marketplaces. Today, we are exploring the economic practices of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the early trade networks that knit ancient societies together. So grab a cup of tea or perhaps a bucket of popcorn and let's journey back in time. Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization and commerce. I want you to picture yourself in the I want you to picture yourself in the ancient lands between the Tigris and the Euphrates River, where the Sumerians and the Babylonians thrived. These early innovators not only built impressive ziggurats and invented writing, but they also laid the very foundations of economic activity. One of the most fascinating aspects of Mesopotamian economics is how they used the cuneiform. That's right, it were the wedge-shaped symbols pressed into clay tablets to record every transaction imaginable. You must have seen this in Hollywood movies where they depict ancient Egyptian characters. From the trades of livestock and grain to loans and even interest rates, these early scribes were the original accountants. They meticulously recorded how much barley was exchanged for a goat, ensuring that all parties knew exactly what was traded. And speaking of rules, let's not forget the legendary Code of Hammurabi. Now, Hammurabi wasn't just a king. He was a lawmaker who codified one of the world's first legal systems around 1754 before Christ. His code wasn't solely about punishments. It also set down rules for trade and commerce. For instance, it regulated interest rates and even prescribed penalties for fraudulent transactions. Imagine if every time you shopped online, there was an ancient law dictating the fairness of that price. Hammurabi's code shows us that even in those early days, people recognized that commerce needed rules to ensure fairness and stability. In Mesopotamia, the economy was vibrant and interconnected. Markets buzzed with activity, and merchants traveled long distances along rivers and overland, carrying goods that would one day be traded for exotic items for far-off lands. These early trade networks weren't just about exchanging items. They were the lifeblood of these burgeoning cities, spurring innovation, specialization, and yes, economic thought. Now, let's move away a little bit from Mesopotamia and sail our ship to ancient Egypt, the economy of Nile. Let's drift over to ancient Egypt, where the mighty Nile River wasn't just a source of life, it was also the artery of commerce. In Egypt, the economy was deeply intertwined with agriculture. The annual flooding of the Nile deposited rich silt onto the land, ensuring bountiful harvests of wheat and barley. These crops weren't merely food, they were the currency of the time. Egyptians had an ingenious system of state-controlled granaries. Temples and places often served as economic centers where surplus grain was stored, distributed, and sometimes even used as a means of payment of labor. The ancient Egyptian understood that controlling food supplies was critical to maintaining social stability and state power. They even developed a unit of measurement called the debin. It was a weight-like structure used to value goods from precious metals to everyday commodities. Unlike the bustling trade in Mesopotamia, Egyptian economics had a more centralized flavor. The pharaoh was not only a ruler but also the supreme economic administrator. Taxation, resource allocation, and trade were all managed under a rigid state structure. Yet beneath this centralized system lay a vibrant culture of trade, with a marketplace where artisans, traders, and farmers interacted in a lively dance of supply and demand. In many ways, the Egyptian approach was both practical and visionary. It was practical because it ensured that the state could weather the unpredictable nature of the Nile's floods. It was visionary because it established an early model of economic planning and resource management that resonates even in today's complex economies. We studied about the Mesopotamian, we studied about the Egyptians, but what if I said that they were interconnected trade networks between these isolated civilizations? Hence, our journey doesn't end with isolated civilizations. Ancient economies were interconnected by vibrant trade networks that spanned continents. We, sitting in 2025, feel that globalization is a new thing. But that isn't true. Globalization existed 2,000, 3,000 years ago as well. Let's talk about how the worlds of Mesopotamia and Egypt didn't exist in a vacuum but were linked by bustling trade routes that resembled the modern highways of commerce. Caravans traversed harsh deserts and riverboats navigated mighty waterways, all carrying goods from one corner of the ancient world to another. These networks facilitated the exchange of luxury items like spices, precious stones, and exotic textiles, as well as everyday necessities like grain and pottery. Trade wasn't just about commerce. It was also a cultural exchange that spread ideas, technology, and even economic practices from one civilization to other. Consider the ancient Indus Valley civilization with its sophisticated urban planning and advanced metallurgy. Evidence suggests that they traded with Mesopotamia, exchanging goods and perhaps even economic ideas. Similarly, Egypt's long history of maritime trade in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea brought them into contact with cultures as diverse as the Nubians and the Phoenicians. These interactions laid the groundwork for a type of early globalization where commerce served as a bridge between different peoples and ideas. Though there weren't formal schools of thought as we might recognize in the later periods, these early economic practices were underpinned by shared understanding of value, fairness, and the importance of record keeping. The meticulous cuneiform tablets of Mesopotamia and the organized granaries of Egypt are evidence of fundamental economic wisdom, that managing resources, ensuring fairness in transaction, and fostering trade are essential to the prosperity of a society. So, let's ask this million-dollar question now. What can we learn from these ancient economies? While the language and tools have evolved dramatically, from clay tablets to digital spreadsheets, the core principles remain strikingly similar. At their heart, these early economic systems taught us the importance of record keeping and transparency, fairness and regulation, resource management, and more importantly, interconnectedness. In essence, by peering back into the economic practices of ancient civilizations, we not only appreciate the ingenuity of the older generation, but also gain valuable insights into the timeless challenges and solutions that shape human societies. Thank you everyone for joining me on this fascinating journey through time. In today's episode of Econ Echoes, we traveled from the fertile plains of Mesopotamia to the banks of the mighty Nile and along the trade routes that connected diverse cultures. We discovered that even thousands of years ago, people were grappling with questions of value, fairness, and resource management, questions that continue to influence us today. I hope this episode has sparked your curiosity and shown you that the history of economics is not just a series of dates and theories, but a vibrant tapestry of human innovation, struggle, and triumph. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll delve even deeper into the evolution of economic thought. Until next time, I'm your host Sagar Raut on Econ Echoes. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, every ancient tablet and dusty scroll has a story to tell.